Commander watched the human soldiers move through their morning drills with quiet disapproval. They were slow, methodical. They checked their weapons 3 times before declaring them ready. They talked endlessly about scenarios that might never happen. This was not how warriors behaved. They had been the dominant military force in the Galactic Coalition for 2 centuries. People had earned that position through genetic perfection. 500 years ago, scientists had identified and removed the genes responsible for fear. Since then, every was born without that weakness. They fought without hesitation. They never froze. They never panicked. They simply acted, efficient and deadly. The humans were new to the coalition. Their planet had only made contact with galactic civilization 3 years ago. Now they wanted to join the military forces that protected the frontier worlds, understood the political necessity of including them. He did not understand why anyone thought they would be useful. Captain Daniel led the human contingent on Epsilon 7. He was tall for his species, with gray hair and calm eyes. Had spoken with him twice. The man seemed competent enough, but he had strange ideas about combat readiness. Your soldiers repeat the same checks multiple times, had observed during their first meeting. This suggests poor memory or lack of confidence. Had smiled slightly. It suggests we don't want to die from a jammed weapon because we got careless. A warrior would never be careless. Neither would a living human warrior, had replied. Had not understood the distinction. Now, standing on the observation platform above the training field, watched Lieutenant Amy Brooks lead her squad through room-clearing exercises. They moved in pairs, covering each other constantly. They announced their positions with short calls. They paused at corners, checking angles before proceeding. A squad would have moved through the course in half the time. They would not have needed the constant communication. Each warrior knew their role. Each warrior executed without doubt. Fear created doubt, and doubt created delay. They had eliminated both. "What do you think, Commander?" had joined him on the platform. The human captain held a steaming cup of something dark. Coffee, they called it. Humans consumed it constantly. "They are adequate," said, which was diplomatic, "but they show excessive caution. Caution keeps them alive. Hesitation kills." Took a sip from his cup. "There's a difference between hesitation and preparation. My people learned that lesson the hard way over thousands of years of warfare. They learned to eliminate the source of hesitation. We removed fear itself." "Yes, I've read about that," said. "Fascinating achievement. Tell me, Commander, what do your warriors feel when they see a brother fall in combat?" Considered the question. Acknowledgement of loss, adjustment of tactical assessment, reallocation of resources. Nothing else. What else would there be? Looked out at the training field where Sergeant Greg Turner was demonstrating a new breach technique. "When I lose someone under my command, I feel grief, anger, sometimes guilt that I didn't make a different choice. Those feelings are heavy, but they remind me what I'm fighting for. Emotional attachment impairs judgment," stated. "This is established fact." "Maybe," said, "or maybe it gives judgment meaning." Before could respond, alarms screamed across the base. The training field cleared instantly as soldiers sprinted for their stations. Communication implant activated with an emergency channel. "All combat units to readiness stations. Hostiles detected. Raiders have attacked the mining colony on Epsilon 7 Delta. Civilian casualties reported. All available forces deploying for immediate response." Moved toward the command center at a run. Kept pace beside him despite being less physically capable. The human's face had changed. The calm expression was gone, replaced by something harder. The command center bustled with activity. Holographic displays showed the colony 20 kilometers south. Red indicators marked positions. Blue indicators showed where coalition forces were mustering. "Estimate 40 to 50 raiders," the tactical officer reported. "They hit the mining operations first. Now they're moving into the residential sectors. Civilians are attempting evacuation, but the raiders are blocking primary routes. Studied the display. Standard raid pattern. Maximum destruction, maximum casualties. They want to make an example. "We have 18 warriors ready to deploy," said Subcommander Axe. "We can strike their center position and break their formation." "My Marines can be airborne in 3 minutes," added. 22 combat-ready soldiers plus Lieutenant Brooks' squad. "Combined assault," decided. "Forces will take the direct approach through the main avenue. Human forces can flank from the eastern sector." Shook his head. "The eastern sector has civilian apartment complexes. If they have put forces there, we'll be fighting through populated areas. Acceptable risk for tactical advantage." "Not to me it isn't," pointed at the display. "We'll take the northern approach. Longer route, but it puts us between the raiders and the evacuation point. That adds 8 minutes to your deployment time." 8 minutes that might save civilian lives. Felt a flicker of irritation. The mission objective is to eliminate hostile forces. Civilian protection is secondary. "Not to my people it isn't," turned to his communication officer. "Alert all units. We deploy in 2 minutes. Rules of engagement are defensive priority. We protect the civilians first, engage hostiles second." "Captain, I must object." "Object all you want, Commander, but those are my orders to my people." Met his eyes. "We're happy to fight alongside your warriors, but we fight the human way." The human way, slow, cautious, emotional. Yet as watched stride toward the deployment bay, he noticed something. The captain's hands were steady. His voice had been firm. Whatever emotions moved through his mind, they did not paralyze him. They seemed to drive him forward instead. Perhaps there was more to learn about these humans than had assumed. The transport bay filled with warriors preparing for combat. Soldiers moved with silent efficiency, checking weapons once and boarding their assault craft. The humans moved differently, faster speech, quick confirmations between squad members, nervous energy in their movements. Private Mason, a young human who looked barely old enough to fight, fumbled with his rifle's power cell. Sergeant Turner moved to help him, speaking low words couldn't hear. Mason nodded, took a breath, and loaded the cell properly. Approached Captain as the human finished checking his gear. "Your soldiers appear agitated." "They're getting ready to fight. Of course they're agitated." "Warriors show no such behavior." Smiled grimly. "Commander, we all know you don't feel fear, but my people do. Every single one of them knows they might die today. They're scared. And they're loading onto those transports anyway. That's what makes them Marines." The transports launched into the afternoon sky, carrying 40 warriors toward a battle none of them had chosen, but all of them would fight. Sat among his brothers, feeling nothing but tactical assessment and calculated readiness. Across the transport bay, he saw the humans sitting in tight groups, speaking quietly to each other. Their faces showed a dozen different expressions, none of them the calm emptiness of a warrior. Yet they flew toward danger anyway. Perhaps thought there was something in that worth understanding. The mining colony burned. Smoke rose from a dozen structures as the transports descended toward the landing zone. Could see raiders moving through the streets below, their distinctive four-armed forms unmistakable even from altitude. Bodies lay scattered across the open areas. Some moved weakly. Most did not. They were known throughout the galaxy as brutal fighters. They took no prisoners. They showed no mercy. They attacked frontier colonies for resources and reputation, leaving destruction in their wake. This was their standard approach, and it was working. "Touchdown in 30 seconds, the pilot announced. "Multiple hostiles in the immediate area." Checked his plasma rifle one final time. Around him, the other warriors did the same. Silent, ready. They would deploy, eliminate the threats, and secure the colony. Simple, clean, efficient. In the transport beside them could see the humans through the small connecting window. They sat hunched forward, gripping their weapons. Some had their eyes closed. Sergeant Turner was speaking to his squad, his mouth moving rapidly. Lieutenant Brooks checked her soldiers one by one, touching shoulders, meeting eyes. The transports hit the ground hard. Ramps dropped. Warriors poured out in perfect formation, spreading into combat positions without a single word exchanged. Plasma fire erupted immediately as they engaged the forces near the landing zone. Moved forward with his unit, firing precisely at targets as they appeared. A raider charged from a burning building, all four arms carrying weapons. Shot it twice in the central mass. It fell. He continued moving. The humans deployed seconds behind them, spreading out with constant verbal communication. Left side clear. Contact 2 o'clock rooftop. Moving to cover Alpha 3. Too much talking, thought, too much noise, but they were engaging effectively, their weapons fire accurate and disciplined. The combined force pushed forward into the colony proper. They had established defensive positions throughout the residential sector. They fired from windows, from behind walls, from rooftops. They advanced steadily, taking casualties but never slowing. When a warrior fell, the others adjusted formation and continued. The mathematics of combat were simple. Victory required acceptable losses. 3 warriors dropped in the first 5 minutes. Plasma burns through vital areas. They had advanced into an ambush position, taking fire from concealed in a building complex. Processed the loss, noted the tactical error, and signaled the unit to flank the position. Unit taking heavy fire, his voice came through the shared command channel. We're moving to support. Negative, replied. Maintain your position, we will handle this. You've got at least 8 hostiles in that building and they've got superior firing positions. You need support. We will adapt, continue your assigned route. They did adapt. They split into 2 groups and assaulted the building from opposite sides. The defenders were eliminated within 2 minutes, lost another warrior in the assault. Acceptable. The human forces moved parallel to them, clearing buildings along the eastern edge of the residential sector, monitored their progress through tactical updates. They were slower than but thorough. Every room checked, every corner cleared, every civilian evacuated before moving forward. Marine Unit, this is Brooks. Lieutenant Brooks's voice came through the channel. We have approximately 40 civilians pinned down in the community center. Forces have them surrounded, requesting permission to divert. Negative, responded before could. The mission priority is eliminating hostile forces. Civilian rescue is secondary. Commander, with respect, those people are the reason we're here. Lieutenant Brooks will follow her captain's orders, said calmly. And those orders are to extract those civilians. All units, be advised, Marine Squad is diverting to the community center. Felt that flicker of irritation again. The humans were disrupting the efficient flow of combat with their constant concern for non-combatants. Yet he continued his advance, trusting that the human forces would eventually catch up. The forces pushed deeper into the colony, driving the back toward their extraction point. The battle was proceeding as expected. They were fierce but disorganized. They would soon retreat rather than face complete elimination. Then heard something through the command channel that made him pause. A sound he had never heard from a warrior in combat. A human voice, young and strained, making a noise that was almost a whimper. Contact, contact. Multiple hostiles, I'm pinned down. It was Private Mason, the young soldier who had fumbled with his weapon on the transport. Mason, report your position. Sergeant Turner's voice came back, sharp but controlled. Building 7, second floor, I'm in a storage room. There's at least 3 of them in the hallway. I can hear them moving. Sergeant, I can't. I don't know if I can. The young human's voice cracked. Recognized panic when he heard it. The private was breaking down. Mason, listen to me, Turner said. You're doing fine. I need you to breathe and tell me what you see. I see the door. They're going to come through the door. I'm alone, Sergeant. You're not alone. I'm 30 seconds away from your position. Can you hold for 30 seconds? I think so. I'm scared, Sergeant. I know you are. Being scared means you're still thinking. Use it. Found himself moving toward Building 7 without consciously deciding to do so. 2 other warriors followed him. The building was outside their assigned sector, but something about the situation pulled at his attention. He reached the building as Sergeant Turner and 2 other humans breached the ground floor entrance, followed them up the stairs. The sounds of movement came from above. Turner moved fast but careful, weapon raised. They reached the second-floor hallway to find 3 raiders attempting to break down a storage room door. Turner opened fire immediately. They turned, roaring their battle cries, and charged. Had seen warriors face charging before. They stood their ground, calculated the optimal firing solution, and eliminated the threats. Turner did something different. He screamed back at them, a raw sound of challenge and rage, and kept firing even as one of the massive aliens closed to melee range. The swung with 2 of its 4 arms. Turner ducked, still firing. The other humans with him flanked the group, their shots precise despite the chaos, added his fire to theirs. They fell within seconds. The storage room door opened. Private Mason stumbled out, his face pale and slick with sweat. His hands shook so badly he nearly dropped his weapon, but he was alive. "You're okay," Turner said, gripping the younger man's shoulder. "You held, that's all that matters." "I froze," Mason said, his voice barely above a whisper. "When they came in the building, I couldn't move. I hid in there like a coward." "You called for help. You gave us your position. You held your ground until support arrived. That's not cowardice, that's survival." "I was so scared." "We're all scared, Mason. Every single one of us." Turner looked at the other humans nearby. They nodded. "Fear keeps us alive. It tells us when we're in danger so we can respond. You responded. You're here. You made it." Watched this exchange with growing confusion. The young human had admitted weakness, had admitted fear, and instead of showing shame, the others accepted it, reinforced it, told him it was normal. A warrior who showed such panic would be removed from combat duty. Fear was weakness. Weakness was failure. Yet Mason straightened, took a shaky breath, and checked his weapon. "We need to keep moving, right?" "That's right," Turner said. "Building's not clear yet. You ready?" "No," Mason said. Then he smiled weakly. "But I'll go anyway." And he did. The young human who had been frozen with terror minutes ago moved down the hallway with his squad, weapon raised, hands still shaking but functional. Followed them, his tactical mind processing what he had witnessed. The human had been terrified, completely compromised by fear, yet he continued to fight. "Commander," one of his warriors spoke, "are we returning to our assigned sector?" Looked at the human squad moving through the building, checking rooms, securing civilians, fighting despite the fear that clearly marked all of them. "No," he said slowly. "We will support the human forces here. They may need assistance." What he did not say, what he could not quite understand himself, was that he wanted to see more. He wanted to understand how these frightened warriors continued to function, continued to fight, continued to put themselves in danger while experiencing the very emotion his people had eliminated. The sounds of battle echoed through the colony. They were retreating but fighting every step. And somewhere in the center of the combat, humans moved forward on shaking legs, with trembling hands, with voices that cracked with fear. And they did not stop. The colony's eastern sector had taken the worst damage. Entire buildings had collapsed during the assault. The structural integrity of everything remaining was questionable at best. His tactical scanner showed red warnings everywhere he looked. The ground was unstable. The buildings were unstable. Remaining in this sector was dangerous even without hostile forces present. Yet somewhere beneath the rubble and inside the damaged structures, Survivors waited. The human forces had detected life signs during their sweep. Now they were preparing to extract them. "This is tactically unsound," stated as he watched Lieutenant Brooks organize her rescue teams. "The structural collapse risk is 87%. Any combat action in this sector will likely trigger catastrophic failure." "Probably," Brooks agreed. She was checking her equipment, running through her preparations with the same methodical attention had noticed in all the humans. "But we've got at least 20 people trapped in the lower levels of that apartment complex. We're not leaving them. The forces are regrouping for another assault. If we commit forces to rescue operations, we weaken our defensive perimeter. Then we work fast." Captain joined them, his armor scored with plasma burns from the earlier fighting. "Commander, I understand your concern. I'm not ordering your warriors to join this operation, but my people are going in. You will suffer casualties. We'll suffer worse if we leave civilians to die, because we were too afraid of the risk." There was that word again, afraid. The humans used it constantly, acknowledging it, discussing it, but never letting it stop them, still did not fully understand it. "I will accompany your team," said, "to observe." Raised an eyebrow, "To observe. Your methods are unfamiliar to me. I wish to understand them better." "Fair enough. Stay close to Corporal Shaw. She's our combat medic. If we find wounded, she'll be the one keeping them alive." Corporal Shaw was a compact woman with dark hair pulled back tight. She carried more equipment than the other soldiers, medical supplies packed into every available space on her gear. When approached, she was triple-checking her supplies, counting items under her breath. "Corporal Shaw, I will be accompanying you during the rescue operation." She looked up at him with brown eyes that seemed tired. "Okay, try not to get shot. I've got limited supplies and humans take priority." "Understood. And if something happens to me," she added, "my med kit is designed for human physiology. I don't know if any of it will work on your people." "Warriors do not require medical support during operations. If we are injured severely enough to be non-functional, we are removed from combat. If we are functional, we continue." Shaw stared at him for a moment. "That's the most depressing thing I've heard all day, and we're standing in a..." The rescue team moved toward the damaged apartment complex in two groups. Sergeant Turner led the first team to secure the upper levels and establish a perimeter. Brooks led the second team, including into the lower levels where the life signs had been detected. The building groaned around them as they entered. Dust fell from cracks in the ceiling. The walls had stress fractures running through them like lightning. Every step they took made the floor creak ominously. "This structure will not hold," observed. "We know," Brooks said quietly. "Keep moving and keep your voice down. Sound vibrations could trigger collapse." They descended into darkness, their lights cutting through the dust-choked air. The stairwell had partially collapsed, forcing them to climb over broken concrete and twisted metal, moved efficiently through the obstacle. Behind him, he heard the humans breathing harder, struggling with the climb while carrying their heavy gear. He heard something else too, a soft sound, irregular. It took him a moment to identify it. Corporal Shaw was whispering to herself. It's okay, you're okay, just keep moving." Her hands, noticed, were trembling, not from exertion. The trembling had a different quality. It was constant, present even when she paused to rest. "Corporal, are you injured?" "No." "Your hands are shaking." "I know." She didn't look at him, focused on the path ahead. "They always shake in situations like this. This indicates a medical condition. You should not be in combat." "It indicates I'm scared out of my mind," Shaw said flatly. "Buildings about to fall on our heads, could attack any second. People are dying down here while we climb through rubble. Yeah, I'm scared. Doesn't mean I'm not doing my job." Watched her continue climbing, her shaking hands gripping the broken concrete, pulling herself forward despite the visible fear. It made no sense. A compromised warrior should remove themselves from danger, yet the humans seemed to operate under different rules entirely. They reached the lower level where the life signs had been detected. The emergency lighting was dead. Water dripped from broken pipes. The walls had buckled inward, creating a maze of twisted metal and collapsed rooms. "Hello," Brooks called out softly. "Anyone here? We're coalition forces. We're here to help." A weak voice answered from the darkness. "Here, we're here, please help us." The team moved toward the voice, navigating carefully through the unstable environment. They found a group of survivors huddled in what had once been a storage area. 15 civilians, mostly injured, some severely. They had been trapped when the upper floors collapsed, sealing them in. Shaw moved immediately to the wounded, her shaking hands suddenly steady as she began triage. "This one needs immediate evacuation. Crushed leg, possible internal bleeding. This one's stable but needs monitoring. This one." She worked through them with professional efficiency, calling out priorities to Brooks. The other team members began setting up a harness system to lift the wounded through the partially collapsed stairwell. Found himself assigned to help move the injured. The first was a young male with a broken arm and severe burns. He screamed when they lifted him, the sound echoing through the damaged structure. The building groaned in response. Everyone froze. "Quietly," Brooks whispered urgently. "We have to do this quietly or we'll bring the whole place down." The injured man bit down on his own sleeve, muffling his cries as they moved him to the harness point. Tears ran down his face, but he stayed as quiet as he could manage. Another human response but didn't understand. The man was in agony, but he controlled himself to protect the others. They worked for 20 minutes, moving the wounded one by one. The building's condition deteriorated the entire time. Cracks spread across the ceiling. The floor developed new weak points. At one point, a section of wall simply collapsed, missing the rescue team by meters. Shaw never stopped working. Her hands shook. Sweat poured down her face despite the cool air. Saw her pause once, pressing her back against a wall, breathing deeply with her eyes closed. Then she opened them and continued with the next patient. "Why do you continue?" asked her when they had a brief moment during one of the harness transfers. "You are clearly experiencing severe distress." "Because they need help," Shaw said simply, "and I'm the one who can help them." "But the fear—" "The fear tells me this matters," she interrupted. "Every injured person I stabilize, every life I save, it matters because I know what I'm risking to do it. If I felt nothing, if I was just doing a job without understanding the danger, would it mean as much?" Before could respond, the building shook, not from collapse from outside, an explosion. The had returned. "All teams, hostile forces engaging our perimeter," Turner's voice crackled through the command channel. "They're hitting us hard up here." "How long can you hold?" Brooks demanded. "Maybe 5 minutes, then they'll be coming down to you." They had 7 wounded left to evacuate. 5 minutes would not be enough. "Double time the extractions," Brooks ordered. "We're out of time." The team moved faster, taking risks with the harness system that made tactical assessment scream warnings. But they got 3 more wounded to safety before the building shook again, harder this time. A support beam cracked above them. It happened in slow motion. Saw it beginning to fail, calculated the trajectory, assessed the blast radius. 4 wounded would be caught in the collapse zone, plus Shaw, who was treating an injured female nearby. "Move," Brooks shouted. The humans scattered, some dragging wounded with them. Shaw stayed where she was, bent over her patient, hands moving rapidly to secure a bandage. The beam was falling. Moved without thinking. He crossed the distance at a run, grabbed Shaw and her patient, and threw them both toward the safe zone. The beam crashed down where they had been standing. In the aftermath, in the settling dust, felt something new, something his biology had never produced before. His chest felt tight. His breathing had changed. His mind was racing, calculating all the ways that could have ended differently, all the ways Shaw and the wounded civilian could have died, all the ways he could have been too slow. The sensation was overwhelming and completely foreign. It took him several seconds to identify it because he had only read about it in reports, had only observed it in other species. Fear. He was feeling fear. Not the tactical assessment of danger, not the calculation of risk, real fear. The emotion his people had eliminated, the weakness they had bred out of their genetics. He was feeling it now for the first time in his life. And it was paralyzing. "Commander," Shaw was staring at him. "Are you okay? You look different." Could not answer. He was too busy trying to process the impossible sensation flooding through his system. His hands, he realized distantly, were shaking, just like Shaw's had been. "We have to move," Brooks said urgently. "They are through our perimeter. We have maybe 2 minutes before they're on top of us." 2 minutes to evacuate 4 wounded through an unstable structure. Whilst mind tried to understand an emotion it had never been designed to feel. He looked at Shaw, at her steady hands as she returned to her patient, at the determination on her face despite her obvious fear, at all the humans around him, terrified and continuing anyway. "Yes," managed to say, "we move now." But as he helped lift another wounded civilian, his hands were shaking, and for the first time in his life, Commander understood what it meant to be afraid. The evacuation point was chaos. Wounded civilians crowded the landing zone while medical personnel worked frantically to stabilize them for transport. The transport ships could not land under fire, so everyone waited while the defensive perimeter held back the assault. But the perimeter was failing. Stood at the command post, watching tactical displays that showed nothing but red indicators. Hostile forces surrounded them on 3 sides. They had committed their full strength to this final assault. 50 raiders, possibly more. The coalition force had 32 effective combatants remaining. The mathematics were clear. They could not win. But mathematics did not account for the sensation that still gripped chest, the fear. It had not faded after leaving the collapsed building. If anything, it had grown stronger. Every time he looked at the tactical display, his mind filled with images of what would happen when the perimeter broke. The wounded being slaughtered, the humans fighting to the last, everyone dying while the transports remained out of reach. His hands had stopped shaking, but the tightness in his chest remained. It made thinking difficult. It made planning difficult. Everything felt heavy and wrong. "Reinforcements are 90 minutes out," Subcommander Axe reported. "Too far to assist with the current engagement." "Then we hold for 90 minutes, Captain said. He looked exhausted, but his voice remained steady. "We've got wounded who can't be moved until those transports can land safely, so we make sure they can land safely." "They outnumber us significantly," said. The words felt strange in his mouth. Normally he would simply state tactical options. Now each word carried weight. "We cannot hold for 90 minutes, not with current force strength." Met his eyes. "Then we'll hold until we can't hold anymore, and then we'll hold a little longer." "That is not logical." "No," agreed. "It's not, but it's what we do." Lieutenant Brooks was organizing defensive positions, spreading the remaining forces to cover the most likely attack vectors. Watched her work with something he now recognized as concern. She had 12 Marines under her command. In 90 minutes, some of them would be dead, possibly all of them. The probability calculations were stark. And for the first time, those calculations felt like more than numbers. They felt like people. Like Sergeant Turner, who had saved Private Mason. Like Corporal Shaw, who had stayed with her patient while a building fell. Like Mason himself, who had fought through his fear to continue doing his duty. They would die, and found he did not want them to die. The emotion was as foreign as fear itself, but just as powerful. He cared about their survival in a way that had nothing to do with tactical efficiency. Commander had noticed his distraction. You look troubled. I am, experiencing difficulty processing current conditions. Studied him for a moment, then gestured to a quieter corner of the command post. Walk with me. They moved away from the tactical displays, finding a space behind a damaged wall where they could talk without being overheard. Pulled out his canteen and took a long drink. You felt it, didn't you? Asked quietly. In that building when the beam fell. Did not ask how the human knew. Yes, I felt. Fear. It should be impossible. My genetics do not allow for such emotions. Genetics aren't everything. Sometimes extreme situations can break through things we thought were absolute. Replaced his canteen. What you're feeling right now, that tightness in your chest, the way your thoughts keep racing to worst-case scenarios, that's fear. Real fear. Welcome to the human experience. It is debilitating. I cannot think clearly. My tactical assessments are compromised by emotional considerations. That's normal at first. Fear is overwhelming when you're not used to it. Leaned against the wall, watching the defensive positions being finalized. My grandfather used to say that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's being scared out of your mind and doing what needs to be done anyway. How do you function with this sensation? You acknowledge it, you accept it. You understand that it's there because you care about the outcome. Looked at him directly. The fear doesn't go away, Commander. You carry it with you. That weight is what makes victory mean something. That weight is what makes sacrifice real. My people eliminated fear to become better warriors. Did you? Or did you just become warriors who couldn't understand what they were fighting for? The word struck something deep in his mind. All his life he had fought without fear, without doubt, without emotional attachment to outcomes. He had won battles efficiently, killed enemies without hesitation, lost comrades without grief. He had thought himself superior for this. Now, standing in a damaged colony with death approaching and fear gripping his chest, he understood the truth. He had been empty, efficient but hollow, going through the motions of warfare without understanding its cost. The weight makes it real, said slowly, testing the words. That's right, every person here is terrified. Every single one of them knows they might die, but they're taking positions anyway. They're checking their weapons anyway. They're preparing to fight anyway. Pushed off from the wall. That's what makes them heroes, Commander. Not that they don't feel fear, but that they feel it and act anyway. An explosion rocked the perimeter. The assault had begun. All units stand ready, Brooks's voice came through the command channel. Here they come. Returned to his position, his plasma rifle in hand. The fear was still there, heavy and present, but he understood it differently now. It was information. It told him what mattered. It told him that the lives around him had value. It told him that this fight was important not because of tactical necessity, but because real beings would live or die based on their actions. They came in waves. The first assault hit the northern perimeter where Sergeant Turner held position with 6 Marines and 3 warriors. Plasma fire lit up the evening sky. The defenders held but fell back 3 meters under the pressure. Northern perimeter under heavy assault, Turner reported. His voice was tight but controlled. We're holding, but we can't take many more pushes like that. The second wave hit the eastern approach. This time it was worse. They had brought heavier weapons. The defensive barriers shattered under concentrated fire. 2 Marines went down in the first 30 seconds. Man down, eastern perimeter. Shaw, we need you here now. Corporal Shaw grabbed her medical kit and ran toward the eastern position. Found himself running after her without consciously deciding to do so. The fear screamed at him that this was dangerous, that he should maintain a safe position, that running toward concentrated fire was tactically unsound. He ran anyway. They reached the wounded Marines as another wave of fire tore through the area. Shaw dropped beside the first casualty, her hands moving rapidly to stop bleeding, took position above her, returning fire at the advancing. His hands were steady despite the fear. Or perhaps he realized because of it. The fear sharpened his focus, made every shot matter. "This one's stable," Shaw called out, moving to the second. The second Marine was in worse condition. Plasma burns across his chest, barely conscious. Shaw worked with desperate speed, injecting medications, applying bandages, fighting to keep him alive while battle raged around them. A broke through the line, charging directly toward their position. Shot it, but more were coming behind. Too many. The line was breaking. "Fall back," Brooks ordered. All units controlled retreat to secondary positions. The defenders pulled back, fighting every meter. The wounded were dragged along. Shaw stayed with her patient, running backward while maintaining pressure on his wounds, covered her retreat, firing until his weapon's power cell ran dry. He reloaded and continued. They reached the secondary line and reformed. Fewer defenders now, more wounded. The mathematics were getting worse. The fear in his chest grew heavier. They were going to lose. People he had come to care about were going to die, and he could not stop it. Private Mason was on the line beside him, his young face set in grim determination despite the visible terror in his eyes. "Commander, are we going to make it?" Looked at the young human. A day ago, he would have given a tactical assessment, calculated the probabilities, stated the numbers without emotional context. Now, with fear teaching him what the numbers truly meant, he found himself giving a different answer. "I do not know," said honestly, "but we will fight anyway, because that is what warriors do, real warriors, the kind who understand what they fight for." Mason nodded, gripping his rifle. "Then let's give them hell." The came again. The defenders held, barely. The fear remained heavy and present, but found he could carry it, could function with it, could fight with it. Not despite the fear, because of it. And in the distance, still too far away but growing closer, transport ships appeared on the horizon. Reinforcements. Coming to a battle where everyone present had learned what it truly meant to be afraid. And what it truly meant to be brave. The medical facility hummed with activity 3 hours after the battle ended. Wounded covered every available bed and many simply lay on the floor with blankets. Medical personnel moved between them in organized chaos, treating injuries, administering medications, saving lives. Walked through the facility slowly. His body was undamaged, but something fundamental had changed inside him. The fear had not disappeared after the fighting stopped. If anything, it had evolved into something more complex. He felt relief that the battle was over, grief for those who had not survived, concern for those still fighting for their lives in surgery. These were all emotions his genetics should have prevented, yet here they were, as real as the floor beneath his feet. He found Corporal Shaw in the corner of the facility, sitting against a wall with her eyes closed. Her uniform was covered in blood, none of it her own. Her hands rested in her lap, still trembling slightly. "Corporal Shaw." She opened her eyes and looked up at him. "Commander, you made it through." "As did you. Your medical skills saved many lives today." "Not enough." Her voice was tired. "Lost 4 on the table, 2 more are critical, might not make it through the night." Sat down beside her, his large frame awkward against the wall. "You did everything possible for them." "Doesn't make it easier." She closed her eyes again. "Every one I lose, I keep thinking about what I could have done differently. Different medication, faster treatment, better positioning. The fear doesn't stop just because the fighting does." "No," agreed quietly, "it does not." They sat in silence for several minutes. Around them, the medical facility continued its grim work. Watched Shaw's hands gradually stop shaking as she rested. He found himself envying her ability to process these emotions. She had a lifetime of experience carrying fear. He had only hours. "Can I ask you something?" Shaw said eventually. "Earlier today in that building you looked different, like something had changed." "Something did change. I experienced fear for the first time." Shaw opened her eyes and looked at him with surprise. Your people don't feel fear, right? That's what everyone says. That is what we eliminated from our genetics centuries ago. But today, in that moment when the beam fell, I felt it anyway, and it has not left me since. And you're still here, still functioning. Barely studied his own hands. They were steady now, but he remembered how they had shaken during the worst of the fighting. I do not know how your people manage this constantly. It is overwhelming. You learn to carry it, Shaw said. It never gets easier exactly. You just get stronger at bearing the weight. And you learn that the fear is there because you care. If you didn't care about the outcome, about the people around you, there'd be nothing to be afraid of. The weight makes it real, repeated the words Captain had spoken. I am beginning to understand what that means. He found Captain in the command center, writing reports. The human captain looked even more exhausted than Shaw, but he worked methodically through his documentation, recording casualties, nodding commendations, processing the aftermath of combat. Commander said, looking up, I heard you've been visiting the wounded. That's not typically behavior. Many things about my behavior are no longer typical. Sat down across from him. I need to understand something. How do your people fight war after war, feeling fear every time, carrying that weight constantly and not break under it? Set down his data pad. Some of us do break. That's why we have counselors and support systems. War takes a toll on everyone who experiences it, and fear is part of that toll. He leaned back in his chair. But we also have each other. We share the weight. When one person is overwhelmed, the others help carry their burden. That's what keeps us functional. The do not share burdens. Each warrior is individually capable or individually expendable. And how's that working out for you right now? Felt the fear shift in his chest, that heavy sensation that had become familiar over the past hours. Not well. I am struggling to process these emotions alone. Then don't be alone. Stood and walked to the window overlooking the colony. Dawn was breaking, painting the damaged buildings in soft light. You fought beside my Marines today. You saved Corporal Shaw's life. Private Mason told me you gave him courage when he needed it. You're not alone, Commander. You've got people who will help you carry this. The words settled something in his mind. He was not alone. That was new too. Warriors operated as units but not as companions. They fought together but did not support each other emotionally. Because without fear, without emotional attachment, there was nothing to support. I need to file a report, said, about today's combat, but I do not know how to express what I have learned. Tell the truth, that's all any report should be. Spent the next 3 hours composing his report. It was unlike any military document he had ever written. Instead of pure tactical analysis, it contained observations about human behavior, about fear as a tactical asset, about the difference between fearless efficiency and fearful courage. He wrote about Private Mason, who fought while terrified, about Corporal Shaw, who treated wounded with shaking hands, about Sergeant Turner, who screamed defiance at enemies he knew could kill him, about Captain, who made decisions weighted by emotional consideration for lives under his command. And he wrote about himself, about experiencing fear for the first time, about learning that the weight of that fear gave meaning to everything he did, about understanding, finally, that his people had not become superior warriors by eliminating fear. They had become hollow ones. The report would be controversial. It challenged fundamental beliefs about genetic perfection and combat efficiency. But it was true, and truth, had learned, mattered more than efficiency. Admiral arrived that afternoon with the reinforcement fleet. The High Commander reviewed the battle damage with his characteristic emotionless efficiency. He commended the defensive action. He noted the acceptable casualty ratio. He processed everything as numbers and tactical outcomes. Then he read's report. This is concerning, the Admiral said. They stood alone in a conference room, the report displayed on a holographic screen. You claim to have experienced fear. That should be genetically impossible. Yet it happened. And you claim this fear was somehow beneficial to combat performance. I claim that fear gave meaning to combat performance. The humans fight for something beyond tactical necessity. They fight because they understand what they risk, what they might lose. That understanding makes their courage real. Admiral was silent for a long moment. The Empire has built its military supremacy on fearlessness. Your report suggests this is a weakness rather than a strength. Not a weakness, a limitation. We are efficient, but we do not understand what we fight for. We win battles without comprehending their cost. We lose warriors without feeling their absence. Met the Admiral's eyes. I felt Corporal Shaw's fear today, and because of that fear I understood how much her actions mattered, how much every wounded soldier she saved meant. The humans carry that weight with every decision. It makes them slower, less efficient, but also more complete as warriors. You are suggesting we reverse 5 centuries of genetic modification. I am suggesting we consider whether we lost something important when we eliminated fear, whether efficiency and meaning are the same thing. The Admiral turned away, studying the damaged colony through the window. This report will be distributed to High Command. I cannot predict their response. I understand. But I will note in my covering statement that you fought with distinction today, that your actions, emotional compromise notwithstanding, were exemplary. The Admiral paused, and that perhaps there are things worth learning from these humans. Captain found that evening, standing at the memorial being constructed for the fallen. Names were being carved into stone. Coalition forces and civilians both, each name representing a being who had lived and died in this place. You requested permanent assignment to human units, said. It was not a question. Yes, if my people will permit it. And if they don't? Considered the question. A day ago he would have accepted any assignment without question. Orders were orders. Efficiency was all. But now, carrying the weight of fear and everything it had taught him, he found his answer had changed. Then I will request it anyway, because I have learned something here that I cannot unlearn, and I do not wish to. Nodded slowly. You'll be welcome among my Marines. Fair warning though, we talk about our feelings a lot. We process our fears together. It's part of how we function. I am beginning to understand that this is a strength, not a weakness. Took me years to learn that, said. You figured it out in a day. You're a fast learner, Commander. They stood together in the fatting light, watching workers add more names to the memorial. Each name carried weight. Each loss meant something. And standing there, feeling the fear and grief and pride that came with understanding that weight, felt more alive than he ever had in his fearless existence. Private Mason approached them, his arm in a sling but his face showing determination. Captain, I wanted to thank Commander for what he said during the fighting, about being warriors who understand what they fight for. I merely repeated what I had learned from observing you and your fellow Marines, said. Still, it helped, knowing that even you were scared but fighting anyway. Mason smiled weakly. Made my fear seem less like failure and more like just part of the job. After Mason left, turned to. That's what it means to fight with humans. We share the fear, we share the weight, we carry it together, and that's what makes us strong. Yes, said, feeling the truth of those words in his chest where fear had made its permanent home. I am beginning to understand. The sun set over the damaged colony. Tomorrow there would be rebuilding. There would be more battles. There would be more fear and more courage and more learning. But tonight stood among warriors who understood what they fought for. Warriors who carried fear as a tool rather than fleeing from it as a weakness. He had felt true fear for the first time fighting beside humans, and in doing so he had become something more than he had ever been before. Not fearless but fully aware. Not efficient but meaningful. Not hollow but complete. A warrior who finally understood what it meant to be brave.